I wasn't researching the postal system of Paris when I found the form. I was looking into something else entirely. A minor bureaucratic scandal from 1890. A deputy's name buried in a parliamentary inquiry. A footnote in a footnote. And then, in the appendix of the inquiry, there it was. A small blue rectangle, reproduced in faded ink, labeled petit bleu. A message form, 20 centimeters long, designed to slide into a tube 65 millimeters in diameter. That's roughly the width of your fist. And according to the document in front of me, 427 kilometers of those tubes ran beneath Paris. Beneath the Haussmann boulevards, beneath the grand hotels, beneath the Bourse and the Élysée and the editorial offices of every newspaper that mattered, carrying these small blue forms from one end of the city to the other in under 2 hours. In 1898, the year the scandal I was researching came to a head, 30 million messages moved through that darkness. 30 million. In a single year. Through tubes that most Parisians alive today have never heard of. I put down the inquiry. I picked up the petit bleu. Stay with me, because this is the part that stopped me cold. The system wasn't a secret. It was beloved. Florists used it. Lovers used it. Writers sent manuscripts by pneumatic tube and received editorial replies the same afternoon. It had a name everyone knew, the Pneumatic, and it had been operating continuously since 1866, which means it ran for over a century before it was finally quietly switched off in 1984. 118 years of daily operation. And yet ask any person on the Rue de Rivoli today whether they know what runs under their feet, and you will get a polite, puzzled look. Not the look of someone keeping a secret. The look of someone who genuinely, completely does not know. Which is a different thing, a much more interesting thing. Here's what I mean when I say the system was elegant. Paris in the 1860s had a communication problem that sounds almost quaint from this distance, but was genuinely crippling at the time. The telegraph existed, but it was expensive, unreliable for civilian use, and required you to go to a specific office and dictate your message to a clerk who then tapped it out and hoped the line wasn't down. The city was growing faster than its infrastructure. Haussmann had torn up the medieval street plan and replaced it with wide boulevards that were beautiful and completely impassable during peak hours. Sending a message across Paris by messenger boy, the standard method, could take half a day. The city was choking on its own size. And someone looked at the sewer network, which Haussmann had also just rebuilt on an extraordinary scale, and thought, we could run tubes through those. Think about that for a second. The solution to Paris's communication crisis was to put pneumatic tubes inside the sewers. The tubes were pressurized. A small metal cartridge containing the petit bleu was inserted at a post office. A valve was opened. Compressed air pushed the cartridge through the darkness at speeds of up to 30 kilometers per hour, and it emerged at another post office across the city. The facteurs pneumatiques, the pneumatic postal workers, then extracted the cartridges, sorted the messages, and delivered them on foot. The whole cycle, from writing to delivery, averaged 90 minutes. In 1866, 160 years ago. Which, somehow, is not the strangest part of this. The strangest part is what happened to the network when it grew. By the 1880s, the system had expanded from its initial route between the Bourse and the Grand Hotel to a web covering most of the arrondissements. Usage was climbing. The post office was building new relay stations, sinking new tubes, hiring more workers. Young boys, some as young as 14, became the human terminus of the pneumatic system, carrying the extracted cartridges from the relay stations to individual addresses. These were the porteurs, and they were famous in the way that delivery people are never famous anymore. Known by name in their quartier, tipped generously, occasionally written about in the press. The infrastructure had acquired a human texture. It was woven into daily life in the way that email is woven into daily life now, except that it was physical. It had a sound, a hiss of compressed air, a distinctive blue paper that you could hold in your hand. And then, quietly, A second network was built inside the first one. The official explanation, when researchers started asking questions in the mid-20th century, was administrative convenience. The government needed a faster, more secure channel for official communications. The existing network served the public. The new one would serve the state. Separate cartridges, separate relay points, separate staff. The public system and the government system would share the same tunnels, the same pressure infrastructure, the same basic technology, but they would never be the same system. The public story and the government story were not the same story. They had the same tunnels. They had different passengers. Here's what the map actually shows. The government network connected the Élysée Palace, the Ministry of the Interior, the Prefecture of Police, the Palais Bourbon, the Senate, and certain telegraph relay stations whose locations did not appear on any public document I could find. The public network connected post offices, hotels, newspaper offices, stock exchange branches, major department stores. Functionally, the two networks were operating in the same physical space, the same sewers, the same compressed air mains. But they were administered separately, staffed separately, and crucially, their existence was noted in different kinds of documents. The public network appeared in post office annual reports, in newspaper articles, in official statistics, in parliamentary budget debates. The government network appeared in internal ministry correspondence, in classified infrastructure surveys, and in a 1909 document I found referenced 3 times in secondary sources, but which I have never been able to locate directly. In 1984, the post office announced that the Pneumatic had become obsolete, too expensive to maintain. The telephone and telex had replaced it. The official closure date was March 30th, 1984. And just so we're clear about what year this is the year of the Macintosh computer, of cellular phones beginning to appear in major cities, of the digitization of French telecommunications infrastructure. The announcement made sense. The technology was old. The network was retired. Except that it wasn't. Not entirely. According to maintenance records filed with the Paris Municipal Infrastructure Authority, records that are public, that are boring, that are the kind of records nobody reads, sections of the pneumatic network were still receiving pressure maintenance and structural inspections as late as 2002, 18 years after the official closure. Still there. Still pressurized. The public system had been switched off. The part I keep returning to is, what exactly had been switched off and what had been left running, and whether those two things were ever actually the same system at all. I want to tell you about Alfred Ely Beach, because his story follows the same pattern, and once you see the pattern, you cannot stop seeing it. In 1869, Beach built a secret subway under Broadway. Not a metaphorical secret, a literal one. He dug a tunnel 290 feet long under one of the busiest streets in New York City without telling the city, the state, or the mayor, by obtaining a permit for a small pneumatic postal tube and then simply building a full passenger transit system instead. The tunnel was luxurious. A waiting room with a fountain, frescoed walls, a grand piano, a goldfish tank. The cylindrical passenger car held 22 people and was propelled by a fan the size of a small building, pushing air behind it and creating suction in front. Beach opened it to the public in February 1870. It ran for 3 years, carried 400,000 passengers, and was then sealed, not demolished, sealed. When the governor who had been bribed to oppose it was replaced by a governor willing to approve a larger system, only for the financial panic of 1873 to collapse the whole project. And here is where it gets genuinely strange, which, as we established when we talked about the parallel network, was apparently optional for the public to know about. In 1912, workers digging the current BMT Broadway line broke through a wall and found Beach's station. Intact, the passenger car still on the track, the fountain still standing, the waiting room furniture still in place. 40 years in the dark, untouched. Workers reportedly stood at the breach and stared. The story of the live cat is also documented, and I will not skip it. During early testing of the New York pneumatic postal tube, a separate, later system from Beach's subway, Engineers debated the safety of the air pressure on biological matter. Someone sent a cat through a tube at 35 miles per hour. The cat emerged, according to contemporary accounts, dazed but alive. This is the correct register for all of this, I think. The system was extraordinary. It was used for everything, including cats. It worked, and then it disappeared. And what took its place was not necessarily better at everything the old thing did. It was just newer, and newer won. Paris had its own version of this pattern. The Pantheon contains a Foucault pendulum that most visitors to Paris know about. The famous demonstration of the Earth's rotation, the pendulum swinging inexorably, the brass disc tracing its path on the sand. Fewer visitors know that the Pantheon also contains, in its crypt, a clock mechanism connected to the pneumatic network. The clock was calibrated automatically by a pneumatic time signal distributed through the Paris postal tubes. Every morning, at a precise moment, a pressure pulse traveled through the network and reset the clocks of subscribing institutions across the city to the exact same second. The city's sense of time was synchronized by the same tubes that carried its love letters and its stock prices, and almost certainly its government intelligence. And beneath occupied Paris from 1940 to 1944, the resistance used the tunnel network. Not the pneumatic network specifically, but the broader infrastructure of the underground city, the catacombs, the utility passages, the maintenance corridors, to move people, to store weapons, to print and distribute forbidden newspapers, to maintain communications across a city whose surface was controlled by the occupation. The infrastructure of forgetting became, briefly, the infrastructure of resistance. The tunnels that the city had stopped thinking about became the only safe space left, which is, I think, the sharpest version of the pattern. When the official world becomes uninhabitable, the forgotten infrastructure becomes the world. Here are the two readings. I have been sitting with both of them for some time, and I want to give them to you fairly, because I think you deserve to choose between them rather than being handed a conclusion. The first reading is the innocent one. Technologies are replaced. Bureaucracies are slow and redundant. When a system is decommissioned, it is rarely decommissioned all at once. Parts linger, inspections continue, maintenance contracts run out slowly rather than all on the same day. The government sections of the Paris network persisting until 2002 might mean nothing more than someone forgot to cancel the maintenance contract. Beach's subway being sealed rather than demolished might mean nothing more than it was cheaper to seal it. The parallel government network might mean nothing more than governments, like corporations, have always believed their communications deserve faster and more private channels than those available to the public, and they built one when they could. The innocent reading says, infrastructure is boring, bureaucracy is slow, and the appearance of a hidden system is usually just the ordinary inefficiency of large institutions failing to tidy up after themselves. The second reading is harder to dismiss. The pneumatic network was not obsolete in 1984 in any technological sense. It was expensive, but it was also, for certain kinds of communication, superior to anything that replaced it. It carried physical objects. It was immune to electronic interception. It was fast. The telephone could replace the message function of the petit bleu for most purposes, but the telephone cannot carry a document, a small package, a cartridge containing something that should not pass through any digitizable channel. If you wanted a communication system that was physically fast, physically secure, and invisible to surveillance of the electronic kind, the pneumatic tube was not obsolete in 1984. It was optimal, which means the question of why the public part was closed while sections of the network continued operating is not just an administrative curiosity. It is a question about what the network was actually for, and who it was actually serving, and whether the public system and the system were ever quite the same thing. The part I keep returning to is this. Every city that built these networks built two versions. London's pneumatic dispatch system, operational from 1853 to 1874, had a government variant that connected certain ministries before the public system was opened. Chicago's pneumatic mail system, which ran from 1904 to 1918, was proposed with a classified annex that appears in the original feasibility documents and then disappears from subsequent records entirely. The pattern repeats across every major city that built this infrastructure in the late 19th and early 20th century. A public network, a parallel network, an announcement of obsolescence, and then, in the maintenance records, in the infrastructure surveys, in the boring documents that nobody reads, evidence that something kept running. I have the petit bleu form in front of me as I write this, or rather, a reproduction of it. The original is in a postal museum in the 13th arrondissement that is open on Tuesdays and Thursdays and apparently receives about 40 visitors a month. The form is 20 centimeters long. There is a space for the sender's address, a space for the recipient's address, and a space for the message. The paper is blue because blue was chosen for visibility, so that the cartridge could be quickly identified and sorted in the darkness of the relay stations. It is a practical object. It was designed to move through darkness, from one point of power to another, at speed, seen only by the people who operated the system. I don't know what moved through the tubes that stayed pressurized until 2002. I don't know who sent those messages, or who received them, or whether the distinction between the public system and the other system was ever as administrative as the official explanation suggests. What I know is that beneath cities that appear entirely modern and transparent and mapped and known, there are layers that operated on different rules, for different people, and that the process by which those layers became invisible was not destruction. It was something quieter, something that looks, from a distance, almost exactly like forgetting. The next time you walk past a municipal building, any municipal building in any city that was built before 1950, look at the ground. Not because you will see anything. You won't. That's the point. Look because the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence, and because the infrastructure of a city is also the infrastructure of its power, and because some of what runs beneath you was never meant for you to know about. And ask yourself, how many of the systems you currently use every day will be running in some form 20 years after they officially cease to exist?